Okay, so today I'll be system designing a collaborative document editor similar to Google Docs or maybe Notion, right? There is going to be collaborated edit, of course. The doc can have text formatting, links, images, कुछ भी हो सकता है उसमें. Things can be there. User access should be authenticated definitely. There are 100 million users. Of course, there are going to be a huge number of users in this. And any edit that I make should be shown to the other users seeing the same document within a very less amount of time. That's for sure. And yeah, snapshot versioning is going to be there, much like GitHub, right? So let us think from first perspective. Let us just assume that I am simply creating a utility service for myself and there is only going to be one user per document. Like, let's just assume that, let's create a base first. I have a user over here, and of course, this user has to be firstly, let me just create this. Mhm. Right. Okay. Let me just let this user have some sort of auth. Maybe Google Auth. Why? Because it's Google Doc, of course it is. So now, right. So now this user is authenticated via Google Auth, and we would need a document creation service. Let me just create document creation service. Yeah, that's good. Good for us, right? He will be able to basically create a new document if he's authenticated, right? I'm just gonna put it over here. Any authenticated user is able to create a new document. And so now let us assume that this user is has like another like a whole, folder for like all the users have a user ID and all those stuff, right? All these users have their own user ID, date authenticated at and something. But the main thing is like user ID or something. Something like user, something like this, right? And let us do the same for the document since it will note when this document was created, the day it was created, right? And I'm just going to create a DB. And in this DB, what are we going to put? Right? So there has to be snapshotting, snapshot versioning, right? For an example, this was updated then and all those stuff, right? So let us just have something like, yeah, the user who created this, of course, and the document ID. Let's give this a document ID, something like this, and last updated at something, and some metadata. In this metadata, we can probably in the future provide that how many users are maybe authenticated onto this, editing this whole document, right? But for now, let's just assume that one user has a single document and he edits that, right? So now let us think. Now, I want to edit this document, right? Maybe this can be what this can be. This can be an SQL database, right? Let's just right and let us keep the document over here. I'm just going to create document editing edit service. So the user, any document that he created is now able to edit the service. Great, right? Now let me just put another database over here, and it's going to be non-SQL database. Why? Because so for an example on Google Docs, when you type in something like this, you have your own rows and columns and stuff, right? Right. For example, this will be stored as something like maybe row one and this and row two. something like this, something like this, right? This whole blob of stuff. So let us keep a either non-SQL database or better if S3 URL over here. Either will do for this case probably, right? So now when the user edits this document, the database gets updated simply. This database gets updated. And also when the user creates a document, creates a blank thing over here, right? Right. And now when the user edits this document, so now when the user edits this document, he should be able to also edit this SQL database since we are updating the last updated data over here, right? So this is a simple snapshotting and creation of a Google document and a simple user being able to edit his own software, his own Google Doc, right? So now let's discuss key if I have more users, what will I do? Right? Let us optimize for. So instead of firstly using Google Auth over here, let us put up, let's just delete this one. And I am just going to put something like now there are a lot of users. User. There are like a lot of users. And now this database will have like be expanded at, user ID, something like this. And there is another user ID or something, right? So now let me think. Okay, so what we should probably do over here, thinking of systems and all those stuff, let us just put an API gateway over here. Let me just simply put an API gateway over here that will help me to, that will allow me to scale this for more users editing their own document. I simply put up an API gateway over here. And okay, there will also be load balancers. Of course, there will be load balancers. Okay, so now we also have load balancers in place. That's great. And authentication takes place over here, right? And now the user is able to read the document, is able to edit the document, right? This probably should not be document creation service. Maybe this should be, document data updation service, something like this, right? And maybe this thing should not go over here directly. It should probably be edited over here since that is better and that works for us, right? Right. Okay, so this is first basic snapshot. And now what we're going to do is, okay, so now firstly, there are definitely going to be a lot of edits. There are definitely going to be a lot of edits over here. So, let us put a Kafka queue over here. Let us just put a simple Kafka queue over here, right? I'm just going to put a Kafka queue over here. And then there is going to be consumer over here that consumes this consumer. Then there is going to be, no, right? Right, great. Okay. And just let me think. Okay, this shouldn't be here. This updations from here can go through here into the Kafka queue. And this updates the consumer edits the SQL database. And this last update is updated and stuff, right? Let me think. Okay. Um, uh, yeah, that's good. That's great, right? So this, let's just assume that for now, this is a system for a single user, right? And let me just copy paste it over here. Now let me think that if, for an example, another user comes in through the API gateway that we already have and load balancers and all those authentication, and this user now should be able to edit the same document as you know, the user A. Let's just have a user A that is editing a single document and the user B on the same document, right? Right. So now what we are going to do, so these are basically clients. You can name that, right? These are all clients. Client side, right? Let us just assume the fact that, okay, firstly, this has to get to a very low latency over here. Let's, instead of this HTTPS connection over here, let us just make this thing a WebSocket connection, a two-way connection, right? A WebSocket connection, right. This is a simple WebSocket connection, and user A edits something over here. Sorry, for example, user B edits something in this document, right? He gets to the document edit service, and whatever is edited over here can be taken from, like, yeah, you get the point, right? So whatever the user B edits over here goes to the load balancers, the API gateways, go to the document edit service, and the same thing is streamed to the client of user A over here, right? Now, uh, you know, there are going to be a lot of problems in this WebSocket, right? This is not going to be just a simple WebSocket. It has an internal working inside of it, right? So basically, how is this service going to actually work, right? Let's get into the some low level design of this, right? So for this, we use a term called as CRDTs. Um, you can search it on Google. I'm just going to search it on Google for you. Full form: conflict free replicated data type, right? Now, what are we exactly doing in this? Okay, also, I just forgot one fact. Let's just have another S3 blob over here. Um, S3 blob for images, right? And the image URL link is like put back to here. Like, so for instead of going through the backend for like these images, let's just keep it like the client connection, and we just use um the S3 something client or something, right? It's called, I don't remember what's it called, but this basically returns the S3 URL to this user, and through the same process, it's updated in the line it is supposed to be, right? So now what are CRDTs, right? Conflict free data types. Now, so let me just tell you, for an example, I have a simple document over here. I have a simple document over here in which hello world is written, and hi there, I am Shubham. Let me just assume that I have two users over here, right? I have two clients, and the user B edits the hello world, and User A edits the second line over here, right? Now, since they are updating in different rows, the conflicts in this document wouldn't occur much, right? You are basically editing, this is row one, this is row two. You are editing different parts of the document. So now these things are not like working, and this is actually like, this is a WebSocket connection over here. Yeah. Right. So these two are WebSockets connection over here. Since they are updating different parts of the document, right now no changes are happening. But let me just assume for a moment, just for a moment, that they are editing the exact same line and maybe even the exact same word. For an example, the O is being updated by uh hmm, right. For an example, they are updating the same word hello over here, right? So now let me just show how CRTTs are internally working in here, right? So for every single letter in this one, you know, there is an array created, right? H, hmm, E, L, L, O. And for an example, this letter doesn't exist over here, right? And user A over here, this user A wants to edit something over here and put up like a letter P over here, right? And the user B over here just wants to put something like letter J over here, right? Right. So now let me just assume that I can name, like, basically create an index in points, right? This is basically the index of the array, right? Right. This is the index of the array. And now when the user A has to edits these things on his own client, he in his browser storage will be basically updating p at some position 2.5, right? He edits 2.5. Now the p over here will be successfully inserted because it's assuming the fact that it is being inserted between 0.2 and 0.3 between over here. So it will be here over here. The p gets inserted over here, and the user b, for example, wants to put some letter k over here, right? Right. So he can basically put up 0.55 or maybe 0.6 or something, right? This automatically happens. This is like the internal working of CRDTs, right? Like this is like the internal working of CRDTs, that if user A and user B both are simultaneously updating one part of the document, how are basically things happening? Like how every single uh, letter updation is fixed within itself. Now, for it, let me just assume that it's actually trying to put over here only, right? So sometimes in this case, what will happen? It might cause some error over here, Uh, it will be maybe, hep. The intention was to put hep low, but hep k low, but it might just, wobble up and come in heck. something like something like this. I mean, it might juggle up a bit if you're trying to edit that at the same place, but most of the use cases, like most of the cases, are basically handled over here itself in the CRDTs, right? Through these CRDTs, right. So this is how it's actually working, right? This is the documentation, the document editing service, and which is connected via a WebSocket for both the users. And this gets updated inside the this thing. Um, this thing, the S3 blob over here. But now there are going to be a lot of updations inside the S3 now. Because, for example, I have a lot of users over here, right? Even though this is happening through WebSocket connection and the server, but this thing is still getting updated, right? So let me just do one thing. Let me just put a Redis over here. I'm just gonna put Redis over here, right? Which basically has the snapshot, I would say, snapshot of the whole document. And maybe even for an example, if a new user comes in, for example, now we have a user 3 over here, right? A user C over here. He can basically get the whole document from the this Redis snapshot itself. And like it doesn't have to request the S3 or non-SQL database that we have over here, right? So this reduces like a lot of things for us right now, right? So yeah, let me think of optimizing it more. Let me think what else can we do in this. So what will well like all our points, the snapshot versioning, right? Hmm. And there are going to be 100 million users that will be handled for our case, because since we have all of this, uh, we have a WebSocket connection. We are handling the WebSocket via a caching service. We have API gateways, we have load balancers and everything. That's very great. And also one more thing. Yeah, the client itself, maybe on the browser storage, will have CRDTs internally working. And also, this whole service, the backend too, that is like the server, will also be having the CRDTs working, right? The difference being this is the collaborative CRDTs, and this will have to resolve some conflicts here and there and decide on their own. And this will have like the internal working of things, right? If the CRDT gets updated and via the WebSocket connection, the server updates the client, and so the CRDT present on client side will be able to resolve things for this client over here, right? If that makes sense. So for an example, let me just show you guys the example, right? And I put something like, and let me just see the network over here. If you can see, um, like if you can see now, uh, whatever I'm putting over here, it's being updated in form of like these things, small things, and like it's basically CRDTs. Maybe I think Google uses this uses Quick internally, but yeah, you get the point, right? This is actually updating a very huge array of things, and this is like another new row over here or something like that, right? So this is how CRDTs are working in the browser on the client side itself, right? And it's also, as I said before, it is working as on the server side itself as well, right? And let me think of more. How can we optimize this more? How can we optimize this more? Mhm. Okay, we might have done something wrong over here. Instead of it should go via the load balancer, and it should be from the API gateway instead of the other way around, right? Okay. Hmm. We can further optimize it more, but it's going to be the same, like thinking of more of systems and more things. For an example, this is maybe I can distribute this thing onto, like, for example, maybe I can make a different, some service that can update, like create the document as a different service because it's really getting hit. And maybe I can have, like, let me think. Let me think. Hmm. Okay. Okay. So, you know what? For the case in which, yeah, for the case in which we don't have maybe like this thing, real-time collaboration, since we don't have users in here, there can be a separate flow for that instead of indulging it everything inside of a single flow, maybe. So, yeah, I guess you get the point. So, this is it for the system design of Google Docs for multiple users. Uh, yeah, thank you so much for watching, I guess.